Yeah. So we are recording. What I want to do today is I'm going to show you my classroom, because you are going to end up teaching this, obviously, in your classroom, and you're going to have questions about how you set your lab up and how to do your lab. Well, what I'm going to show you, this is the back of my classroom. So there's the classroom there, and you can see kind of pan across. You see all the equipment we've got here, by the way. We've got a bunch of gear because we got gear from Skills USA in here. But you'll notice what we have in the back is what I call my networking wedding trestle. So we have put in 4 different racks. Now, this is not required, and this is just one way of doing it. So there's a lot of different ways. Some people use roll-in racks that they put their gear on, so they don't have it permanently mounted in their classroom. But what we've done is we put in these racks like this. And so each rack will hold equipment. Now, a lot of our equipment is actually in our net labs right now. So you'll notice there's not a lot of gear in here, but typically these are full of equipment. And you'll notice that it has 2 routers and 2 switches. That's your typical pod. You'll also notice that these are 4321s, and they have a special little ear marker, so they'll fit in a 19-inch rack. So these are just typical 19-inch racks. You'll see here's our console cable, console connection, just like we were talking about, power. Now on these racks on the bottom down here, I have a couple special SOD power outlets so that we can power these devices. But you'll also see how the racks connect to one another. So if I need to jumper from rack 1 to rack 2, I have a 48 port patch panel that jumps over to rack 2. All right. And I have one going to rack 3 and rack 4. But the neat thing about this is what we do on our student PC. So come in here and show you if I can get in here close. Can you see that little box down there? That box visible? Maybe I'm not on the box. All right, right here. There's a box here, and that box is designed to have a couple things in it. Each one of these ports goes back to, except for the one that says Stanley, which is our main network. Each one of these goes back to one of the ports on the 48 port patch panel in the back of the room. So if this PC needs to connect to the console on a device in the back of the room, we plug the console cable from the PC, which is connected permanently, into a port. So this is port 28. Then we can just go back here in the back. We find port 28, which is right here, and we can jump her down to the console, and we would have console access to our devices. So that's what we do in our classroom. Now, it's only one way of doing it. There's multiple ways of doing it. For years, what we used to do is we would literally just sit the equipment right beside the PC. So it'd sit down here beside the PC, and it would be available in a stack. And that's much easier to do now because the pods themselves are only 2 routers and 2 switches instead of 3 routers and 3 switches. Cisco is, this is the gear, the typical gear, the physical gear that's going to be in your classrooms. There's some different models of routers that could be available, 4221s, 4331s, and 4331s are all different types of the routers that could be used. The bad thing about these is they have external power supplies, so you have to find somewhere to put those power supplies, which can be a bit of a pain, but it is something that's possible. Now, do you have questions about, now, and then the rest of my classrooms, just typical classroom. You can see how it's just a normal classroom with, you know, we got smart boards on each side and everything here. But that's what we do in our classroom. Do you have any questions for me about how you think your classroom would be set up? Because I want to make sure that this is also something we need to talk about. It's not just a matter in these courses of teaching you the material and what the materials are, but we also need to talk about how you're going to deliver this at your school.
Professor Cotto.
Yes.
Is Hampton University going to have a lab like that? Or are we going to use yours? I don't know.
As far as I know, I think Hampton is going to have gear there locally. So I'm pretty sure you're going to have your own gear there locally. I don't know. I haven't talked to Dr. Harrison on the specifics, but I would think that, yes, you will have gear there in your classrooms, one of your classrooms at least, definitely.
And you mentioned this is beautiful. Your lab is very beautiful, and you show a lot of the connections, the cables, and then is there like the for the routers, all the other auxiliaries? Where do you keep them?
Okay, that's a very good question. I'll show you something that I have learned. This is all of our straight through cables, and I've got them hanging on a literally. This is a yard implement holder from Lowe's. In other words, it's made to hold hose and shovels and things. I went and bought it at Lowe's, mounted it to the wall, and that's what holds my console cables. I've got another one over here. These are not console, excuse me, straight through cables. These are old, these are called serial cables. These were what in the curriculum years ago. They're not in it anymore. But you'll notice I just mounted it to the wall. And so that's how I do my cables. So I have in my classroom, I have our straight through cables are mounted in a section. I have our crossover cables, which we don't have to use a whole lot anymore because remember we have now we have auto cross, so we don't really use crossover cables anymore. But in the older models, we had to use crossover cables. So this is all crossover cables. And then I've got a section down here that is power cables and our console cables that we use. So for me, that's how we store things. Now our other gear, Francisco, our other gear we mount onto the racks. That's pretty much what we do. Now all this gear that's out here, this is actually some spare gear and some things that we've got. So a lot of this is going back to Cisco because it was used for a special project. But a lot of this gear is older gears. These are 2800 series routers. I'm actually trying to figure out ways that I can donate these. I need to figure out the state of North Carolina what I can do with them to donate. But for most of our gear, we mount it into a rack like this. And then that way the biggest problem is you'll notice this router is not that big. So I like to mount it in something so it doesn't grow feet and take off on its own. You know, most people are not going to unscrew it from the rack and take it, but if it's sitting around, they would take it. Now, having said that, because of that, I do have many schools that do this. You'll notice back here, I've got these cabinets. Many schools put cabinets in their labs, and then they just put their gear into the cabinets. And when they're done at the end of the day, they'll put the gear back in the cabinet and lock it up. So that's also an option. But for us, we've got it all basically in this lab. Now my lab is an absolute junk hole right now. I can't believe how bad it is. I hadn't been in here in a while to work. I've been teaching online so long, but this lab is in pretty bad shape. These, like I said, are just standard 19-inch racks. Many people buy half racks. They buy the ones that are half tall and put them on wheels. So you can actually build a little cart to put them on wheels. Or you can even get racks that are made kind of like this old Dell rack or this APC rack. They're made like this Dell rack that's half height that will roll. So you can put your gear in that. You can store them in a closet and keep them locked up when you're not using them. And then when you need them, you just roll them out and your students can use them. Considerations for you to take into account. Number one, how do I connect my PCs to the pod so they can be used as lab computers? Because that's important, very important. For us, we can disconnect from Stanley's network and we can connect to the back of the lab. The other thing is power. Do you have enough power outlets, or can you buy SODs or switched outlet devices that you can put onto your racks so that you'll have power outlets for your devices? And then the other thing I always take into account, believe it or not, depending on how many devices you have in your lab, is heat. If you put a lot of lab devices in a small room, it creates heat, it creates noise. Your lab, when all your computers, all your labs devices are running and the routers are running, they can be somewhat loud. So be aware that you're going to have to deal with noise issues, heat issues, if you're in a very small room and you have your equipment. Any questions about the lab?
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Do you worry about the temperature of the lab?
I do. Typically now in this room's fairly large. So this room, I don't have heat issues in at all. I've been in smaller rooms where we had, 8 to 10 pods, and it did get hot. I have actually in the past, like I said, right now, a lot of our gear, actually, I'll show you, I don't know if I've shown you our data center. I'm going to take you back to show you our data center. But when these racks are fully populated, and so I've got 8 or so pods in each rack, and they're all running at the same time, it does create a good amount of noise, and it does create a little bit of heat. The biggest problem I've seen, though, Francisco, is when people try to put their labs like this. There may be a closet beside of a classroom, and they decide to put the labs or the devices in that closet and have them running in the closet, and they don't think about heat, and that can cause a lot of heat issues. So that's the biggest problem I've seen with heat. Are there any other questions about the lab? Like I said, I want you to feel comfortable about how your lab's going to be set up, and every lab is different. This is just one way that we've done it. And again, we use those little boxes on the table, and you'll see those cables right here. These are all the cables coming from the boxes on the table, and they come up and run up in here, and they're patched down on this patch panel right here. And then we can jumper from really any PC in the room. And the cool thing about putting a patch panel to all the other racks, these are all straight through, so we can literally jump from any network device on this rack over to another networking device on another rack very, very easily. So again, this is just something we come up with over years of being in the Cisco Academy. I would say start out with a single rack and then go from there, or no rack and just have it sitting out on your desktop. All right. Any other questions about the lab? Because I'm going to take you back to the data center here. I figured today would be a good day to do some roaming things. It's finally quit raining here. It's actually very sunny, which means it'll end up being so humid this afternoon you won't be able to breathe. Dr. Cornell, I've been reading about Hampton University and how it started, and it's a very interesting history.
You're welcome anytime, you know.
Well, when things get calmed down, I will definitely come up because
I already talked to the president, and he said that when he comes to Hampton, he's going to be welcome at the faculty club. So
I would definitely love to do it. So I'm going to show you now, everyone, our data center. This is our data center. This is what you connect to when you connect to our net labs. In fact, if you're using pod 1, right there is pod 1 up there. So you can see it with all the pods. Okay, all over here. This is the cool side of our data center. So we got about 65-degree air coming through on this side. On the other side, the temperature's up in the 80s. Here's one set of our servers. Oh, hard to see because of the glare. I'm not. Here's one set of our servers that we manage. And then we actually manage 2 full more racks of servers. We got 40, I think something like 44 or 45 servers that we manage inside of our environment here. This is something that we built over a period of time with grants. This whole system and the generator out back, which is a 200 kilowatt generator, was almost $650,000 to put in. But compared to where we were, this is pretty amazing. We've actually got room right here. My eventual goal is to put another rack right here and have equipment so that every school that is a Cisco Academy with us, and really any school that needed it, would be able to get access to real gear. But that's one of the things, when you're in net labs, that's one of the things I love. You're not dealing with fake gear. You're dealing with real gear. And the only thing that's really the equivalent of that is either being in the classroom with real gear, or if you are using like virtualized iOS, which is like the true iOS off of Cisco Modeling Labs. So that is something that's possible. So anything else you'd like to see about the data center? Like I said, back over here, if you've never seen a transfer switch, here's the transfer switch to a generator. Okay, so this actually connects out to the generator. And if the generator the power goes off, it makes a very loud popping noise, and it switches over the breaker, and the generator will take over immediately. Usually, it was actually taken over in less than 3 seconds, and it was so fast it was tripping a breaker, so we had to set it to be a little bit longer. This system is called a Vertiv data center. It's a self-enclosed data center that has this. It has a Liebert AC system in it, so it's actually got a built-in battery backup system. So the batteries are here. So if the power goes off, it automatically will start running on the batteries until the generator comes on. We can run the data center for about 30 minutes without the generator. So if the generator doesn't come on, we are definitely in trouble. I also have left the door open somewhere. See, my light's not on, all doors closed. And I see which one it is here. Maybe not. I might find that door. So I'll find that door here in a minute. I opened up the door and left it open. That's either that or my light bulb burned out, which is also something that happens fairly commonly. Check my light bulb. Any questions on the data center?
What happens if the power doesn't come off in the 30 minutes?
If my generator doesn't come on in 30 minutes, we're in trouble because our devices are going to shut themselves down. They're going to start shutting down. We don't have them set right now to gracefully shut down because we're hoping the data center will come on. There is a way to set it up to where you could actually have every one of the power supplies on the devices automatically shut the devices down. We just don't have that set up right now. I'm gonna hold on one second, everybody. I'm gonna see if I can't get back over here to. Okay, so what I was doing, folks, is I had opened the door down there and the green light was off. This green light's super important because that green light tells you all the doors are sealed, and it will it allows for the proper airflow. This also actually has a built-in fire suppression system in it. So if there's a fire inside the data center itself, it'll drop a gas that will put the fire out, and then the equipment continues to run. In fact, we had it dump one time. We didn't even realize it had dumped. But the question you had was, what would happen if the generator did not come on? All these devices would shut themselves off. It does have a special thing too, that if the power goes off, the air conditioning units go off to save battery power. But what will happen is there are fans along the bottom here and along the top. If it becomes too hot, they'll open up, start blowing air out of the system, so that it will eventually, shut itself down. But the goal is that the generator will always come on. We run a weekly test. We run the generator an hour every week, and ensure that the generator is charging the batteries, that everything works correctly, and there. I will show you one of the things that we don't think about as network admins. You spend a lot of time in working on networks and all, but you don't really think about things like, and it's real hard to see. Man, I didn't be able to see it. Let me see if I can get out here. It's gonna make an interesting video, but can you see my generator out there? You don't think about cranes and things to bring generators in. You don't think about bollocks, and you don't think about, how you're going to get diesel fuel to your generator. But all of that is part of having a data center and being day-to-day management of a data center. The other thing that's interesting is just maintenance. And that means maintenance on the batteries, maintenance on the air conditioning units, maintenance on the generator itself. Just the maintenance contract for our data center is almost $20,000 a year. So we have a lot invested in that data center, but as you've been able to see from using our NetLab systems in class, it's a super important part of what we do because it allows us to be able to teach online the way we do.
Have you experienced any lightning hitting any of your equipment? Because in some centers, I see a lot of defective switches.
We have not. Thankfully, it's all surge protected through the UPS system. By the way, everybody, I'll introduce, this is Michael Bowden. Michael is our Academy support specialist. You all will be working with him as we continue to do more and more with your academies. But no, we have not, because that particular system is grounded through the building ground. We are actually up on top of a hill, so we are actually very prone to lightning strikes. But luckily, we've been good so far. You know, it could hit, but the way the system is designed, it is designed to actually allow it to run out of the down through the building's ground and not cause a problem. Okay. Other questions?
In the small setting of the system, the UPS backup, because I experienced about 2 or 3 of them in my battery service that's already gone up. I mean, what would you say you use the UPS system? Do you have any problem with it, or do you replace it any overloading it, or do you see anything there? Because we have already changed that, but like every year we're changing it, and that is all it's here.
We have not. Now we are under contract. We can do a certain number of batteries per year can be replaced inside of our data center. So yes, there's always a possibility that you can have batteries go bad in the data center itself. That's something that it does happen. But it's, you know, that's just part of the UPS. UPSs have batteries go bad. That's again part of that $20,000 a year contract. They'll replace X number of batteries depending upon you know, what they are and what happens. So it's nice to have that contract, but it's also still expensive to have that contract. Okay, other questions about the data center, about our lab? I know that was a pretty unique meeting for the day. Are there any questions you have on anything else about class?
Professor Cotto.
Yes.
I was looking that you are moving around, and still we can see you and we can see your lab. Do you have an assistant, or how do you tape this?
This is my phone. I'm actually running. All I'm doing is I'm running Zoom on my phone, and I've just been walking around with my phone. That's all I've been doing.
Okay.
I wasn't sure at all how it was going to turn out, so hopefully it's good enough to watch and it will be useful. But that's it. I was just walking around with my phone. So okay, everyone. That's really all I have for today. I just wanted to show you my lab. I wanted to go over, show you the data center, let you see how we do our lab, and let you start thinking about how you're going to do your lab on your sites and how you're going to set them up. So again, if you aren't here at the very beginning, take a look at the beginning of the video so you can kind of see how my lab is set up, and then we can discuss your lab and how you need to set your lab up on your campuses. Okay, any other questions before I stop the recording? Tracy, I saw you showed up. Jelani. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna stop the recording.